Oftentimes, in a summer experience like research, an internship, or even some jobs, you may be expected to compose and deliver a presentation for a project you are working on or an issue the organization is facing. At Whitman, you may have been exposed to opportunities for this type of presentation through a student club in one of your classes at the Power and Privilege Symposium or the Whitman Undergraduate Conference. These experiences are helpful in building your confidence and knowledge of how to speak to an audience. However, sometimes you'll find yourself presenting in circumstances to which your previous experience is not applicable at all. The Student Engagement Center recently created this presentation using content we found by Nancy Duarte, who is an American author and speaker, as well as a recognized expert on building and delivering a strong slide presentation. We've enhanced that with additional recommendations from our campus expert, Associate Dean of Students, Juli Dunn. We hope you'll find the following set of questions helpful to consider as you create your next presentation. The first item to consider when developing a presentation is who will be receiving the information. Your message to a group of seasonal workers about the services they can access on the phone app you're developing as a startup intern is going to be different in terms of language, method, and tone than the message you would deliver to a group of community leaders on the ways to address local homelessness, which is very different from the message you would deliver to a group of executives at a global marketing organization about the consumer feedback regarding their latest campaign. Identifying your audience will be critical to understanding the type of information, level of formality, and method of presentation you should use for your topic. Find out what makes them tick so you can create a personal connection and deliver a message that will make an impact. Once your audience has been identified, next you'll want to consider how they will best receive the information. In your bio lab, it may be ideal to do a hands-on dissection to detail your new learnings about a salamander's DNA, but a cohort of finance interns may do better with handouts that include charts or graphs detailing the economic viability of a particular investment. Or the board of directors at your nonprofit environmental organization may want a slide deck to view while you speak about ways to increase the impact of volunteer work. It is essential to the success of your presentation to understand what medium will best support the delivery of information to your identified audience, and it is far more efficient to consider this early in the process. Not sure which method is best? Ask around to coworkers, your supervisor, or a mentor. Once audience and medium have been identified, you want to be sure you're very clear about what the key message or big idea is for your presentation. Whether you're attempting to convince your lab manager to use a new protocol for your research or presenting said research at a conference of expert psychologists, clearly identifying the crucial key message will help you to determine what content to include or stories to tell. If you are creating a slide presentation, every slide should support your idea and follow a logical sequence. If you are delivering a paper, ensure that all supporting facts drive toward your main message. If you just can't cut that not-so-relevant chart or cited reference that is interesting but not quite tied to the big idea, consider adding an appendix or sharing it after the presentation so you don't move off topic inadvertently. Facts alone will not persuade the audience to connect with your presentation. Stories help presenters evoke an emotional response in their audience that will increase empathy and allow your audience to understand differing viewpoints. Consider that class in which the professor is able to hammer home the information you're discussing by sharing a relevant, personal story. They are giving clear context to the message they are focused on communicating. Again, this goes back to knowing who you're presenting to and the type of narrative that will help them connect to the information you are sharing. In every presentation, there will be aspects that are debatable. Whether your presentation is intended to persuade or simply inform, the perspective, data, relevancy, and outcomes can all be challenged publicly or privately. By preparing for and addressing key objections to your argument within the presentation, you will demonstrate your depth of knowledge on the topic as well as your empathy for an alternative perspective, both of which will increase your credibility with the audience, so they don't look like this guy when you finish. Any good professor with a class offered post-lunch knows the quality of a presentation is enhanced by using suspense to keep the audience engaged. If you've ever heard Dean of Students Kazi Joshua speak to a large audience, you've experienced this kind of tension. It builds and releases throughout his presentation. Kazi is strategic about his voice inflection and the way that he asks questions, creates pauses, and shares opposing viewpoints. Further, sometimes a persuasive presentation will utilize the practice of switching between two opposing scenarios. This is often depicted through an as-is versus what could be confrontation. For a presentation not intended to persuade an outcome, the tension can sometimes be created through compelling visuals that put the audience into a certain mood or feeling, like this one, that communicates the focus through a sensory experience. When you're working on a topic in which you have a great deal of expertise or understanding, it is easy to falsely assume that content, context, and delivery are all quite clear. Ever experienced this with a paper in one of your classes? The truth is, you will be presenting to an audience composed of individuals with different perspectives, backgrounds, knowledge bases, and experiences. So to ensure that you haven't built your presentation in a vacuum of understanding, you need good, honest feedback. Consider practicing your presentation with a few people who you trust and are similar to your target audience. Ask for an honest critique. If any of them have this face when you finish, you might need to work on clarity of message. In that case, make clearer in your presentation any questions they may have. As previously discussed, extensive knowledge of your topic is critical to addressing any challenges to your argument that may come up during your presentation. Your knowledge is also crucial to a skilled delivery of your presentation. As an audience member, nothing is worse than waiting while the presenter flips through their copy of the document they are speaking about, or while they run through a slide presentation reading each and every word to you, while you nod off in your chair. Avoid putting too much information on the slide, and instead use images and informatics that communicate key points while you, yourself, provide the context and commentary that you know so well. If you're presenting from a document or group of charts, then highlight the key information or inferences that are most directly related to your big idea, and ensure that a takeaway document has complete information. The key to succeeding in this area is to practice again and again until you can deliver the presentation without looking at any of the material. Just as you may have experienced with your first encounters paper, there is a tendency when presenting to share too much supporting information at the outset. Too many supporting details or not quite relevant stories can exhaust your listener, lose their interest, and muddy your message. Focusing on the big idea, reducing the amount of supporting information, and communicating one idea per slide, chart, or section will sharpen your presentation and keep your audience engaged. Anything else should get chopped, like with these axes. Have you ever been in a presentation or lecture that is engaging, rousing even, really gets you excited about the topic, and then ends with nothing for you to do with that excitement? An example may be a guest lecturer on campus who delivers an excellent talk addressing the issue of increasing acidity in our oceans. Perhaps the talk is engaging with great stories and incredible slides that compel you to want to work on solutions. And then, at the end of the presentation, they neglect to share the names of organizations working on the issue that may be seeking volunteers, or any other information regarding how you can get involved. The audience is then left to their own devices to determine their own next steps, which can be disappointing and ultimately lead to apathy. Don't make the same mistake of letting a strong presentation fall flat by forgetting to encourage action from your audience. Whether it's suggested steps for each of your team members to achieve a shared office goal, one key action you want everyone in the room to take, or a list of recommendations like the one you'll see next, you want to leave your audience with a clear understanding of what you're encouraging them to do. More and more these days, slide presentations, either through PowerPoint, Google Slides, Prezi, or a number of other platforms, are used to support communication in a variety of circumstances, like lectures, conferences, office meetings, etc. Through this slide deck, we've shared with you some key questions to consider when you're drafting and creating your own presentation. And here, Associate Dean of Students and our favorite presentation nerd, Juli Dunn, has shared some of her personal insights to help you nail your next presentation with flying colors. Good luck!